it's Rebecca from Rebecca Inc. Today we are going to draw a praying mantis. Karen Booker wanted to draw a praying mantis, so it has arrived in my list and that's what we're going to do. What you need to join in is a piece of paper, a pencil, a marker, and an eraser, or you can use the back of a pencil eraser as well. All right, you're going to grab your pencil. I'm going to use a marker so that you can see me better, but you're going to use a pencil. This is about what our praying mantis is going to look like. They're kind of cool looking. All right, I'm going to move my guide and let's get started. You're going to start in kind of the upper right-hand corner of your page over here. Real quick, I'm going to make sure. Yep, I got my time lapse going. I think that's kind of fun to see at the end. So we're going to start in the upper right-hand corner, just a little bit down, and we're going to do two circles that are fairly small. So I'm going to plant my wrist, and I'm going to set my pencil down and go around and around and around and around. And I'm going to arrive at a nice circular shape. Right next to that, same thing. You can air draw it and then set your pencil down. Our marks right now are nice and light, not too heavy. Inside this first circle we drew, we're going to draw another circle, right like that. Now I looked at a bunch of pictures of praying mantises. Some of them had red eyes, some of them had green eyes, some of them you couldn't see that pupil at all. I chose to draw one with. Some of them had slits. So I really couldn't decide what the typical praying mantis had, so I'm going to give him an eye like that. So it might not be 100% correct. In between these two circles, let's add a little connecting triangle like I like to do. And then off that triangle, we're going to add in the antenna. Just some simple lines. They're almost going to form a V. We're going to start here, plant your wrist, and then arc your hand in that natural motion it's going to go in. Go back and forth over it a few times. Same thing, just slightly over, plant your wrist, move your hand in that natural motion it's going to go in. And you get some nice antennas there. If you've never drawn with me before, the lines that we are creating right now are just going to serve as guides. So let them be messy, let them be a little all over the place. And in the long run, you'll see it come together and you'll be really proud of what you did. So try to be patient with yourself at this point. All right, next up, we're going to do a long, skinny triangle off of those circles. It's going to come down like this and then over like that. So kind of the middle of that circle over to the middle of that circle. And at the base of it, add in a little circle. Very good. All right, off of that, we are going to do a nice triangle headed this way. From about here, off of that, just up just a little bit from the nose and over to the eye, just like that. You see that triangular shape there? I love how I sketch this out ahead of time, and then as I'm doing it, I see a better shape. So I switch it up. Keeps it interesting for me. All right, now we're going to move on to the back of our praying mantis's body, and it's going to take up the majority of your paper here. It's going to be angled about like that. So let's give ourselves a few just diagonal lines so we know where we're headed with the shapes I'm giving you next. From that eye, we are going to plant our elbow and just kind of move. Actually, we're not planting our elbow. I take that back. From your shoulder, kind of plant your forearm. Keep that nice and still and just drag your hand down the paper just ever so slightly and give yourself a nice diagonal guide. Nice and light right there. Then we're going to add at the top of that diagonal guide, we are going to add in an oval about that big. It can come down to the top of that triangle that you had, right there. Then we're going to add in a little bit fatter one right here, just a little bit. Very good. Next up, where we had that diagonal guide, we're going to use the edge of that to create one long, skinny rectangle. Right like this, draw on the bottom just a little bit below it. Then you can actually close it off, just like that. Very good. Let's add in the back wing of our praying mantis, and then we'll know where to keep all of our legs and feet and stuff. At the base of that rectangle that we just drew, let's draw an oval that's about this big. Now these shapes on the praying mantis today, they're fairly small. So I'm planting my wrist and I'm moving my fingers in the shapes that I want. And when I get that shape drawing in the air, I set my pencil down. I get a nice oval shape there. Off of that oval, at the very back, we're going to add in a long oval. Now this oval is big. So we're going to get our whole arm going on this guy. Around and around we go. See how mine isn't perfect? I have some lines that are in and some lines that are out. You're going to have that same thing, and we're not going to worry about it, because in the long run, do you see that shape I created? It's a nice oval. Now on this oval, I did make the back of it fairly flat. So try to do that with yours. If you haven't done that yet, now's the perfect time. Go ahead and make that nice long flat back on your oval. At the end of that oval, let's add a little triangle that's going to be about the same width of the oval we just made. See how I had to adjust mine a few times? You'll probably have to do the same. Next up, inside that oval, they have a little white shape right about here. On some of the ones I saw, it read as a triangle. On others, it read as an oval. So I'm going to choose to make it an oval. If you see a praying mantis propped up against a wall or clinging to a wall, the back of them almost looks like a leaf. So I think that's some natural camouflage for it. It's kind of cool. All right, so we drew this body oval. Then we drew a little triangle on the end to kind of get the point there. Little detail oval inside there. Now we're going to add in the body of our praying mantis, and that's going to be another oval right about here, and it's going to kind of overlap. So let's get our arm going from our shoulder and draw in an oval that's going to be about this big, just like that. It's okay if they overlap. In the long run, we will erase all these pencil lines. So they're serving as our guides, so they're going to get a little messy and kind of go over each other, and we'll pick the right one when it comes time to trace. Okay, let's go back up to the top of the body. Let's add in these funky front arms. Off of this oval, so we had one long oval and then we had a little bit fatter oval right here. Off of this oval, we are going to add two circles. This front one is going to live right about here, and it's pretty little, a little bit littler than the eye shape. So plant your wrist and get your fingers going. Go around and around and around, and you will end up with a nice round shape. And then right behind that, just above it, it's going to read behind, but above it, let's draw another one right there. That one's going to look like it's on the other side of our praying mantis. I'm looking at my guide, and since we're right here, I do have a connecting triangle right here between the face and that neck. So let's add that in. I get ahead of myself sometimes. Can you see that triangle I just drew in there? We really just needed the baseline. So add in that right there. Okay, on these front arms are the ones that you see, they're like usually like this together. They're praying. I'm going to double check. Sometimes when I make hand motions, my camera doesn't know what to focus on, so we still look good. So let's continue on. Okay, we're going to have an oval that comes down about like this. Now their front arms are kind of fatter, so we're going to let that be a little thicker. It's going to be about that big. I'm planting my wrist for these shapes because they're still kind of small. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the back arm. So if you think of it like in people terms, that little circle we just drew, this circle here, that'd be like their shoulder. So we're going shoulder down to elbow, and then same thing on that back arm. Okay, now let's do elbow to wrist. Now this oval that we're going to do next, it's going to be about this big, and just like we did with the shell, the back of our praying mantis, it's going to have a nice flat line across the top. So try not to make your oval too rounded on the top there. Try to keep it kind of flat, just like that. Nice skinny ovals this time. We have lots of little shapes today. Then let's do our connecting triangle like I like to do, right there in the crook. That would be like the inside part of your arm where it meets up with your elbow. I'm touching my elbow. You can't see that, but I know what I'm talking about. All right, back leg, same thing, little flat oval. Now this back one, because his arms are extended, the back one is going to read like it's coming out in front of it a little bit. Then add in your little connecting triangle. Very good. Now this next section, which would be like, they've got an extra section, so I'm going to call these their hands. This part is kind of funky. We're going to add in a little rectangle right here. On the end of that is super teeny tiny. Add in a little rectangle that's angled, headed, like pointed down. And then off of that rectangle, we are going to add an oval. It's kind of tiny, just like that. And at the end of that oval, we're going to add in a few arcs. So kind of take your pencil up that oval, and when you get to the bottom, flick it out that way. Then we're going to touch our pencil to that oval and kind of overlap, and we're going to give a nice arc headed down. Plant your wrist, move your hand in that natural motion it's going to go in, and give yourself an arc there. Let's go back to that little flicked part. Let's accentuate that a little bit so we know what we're doing when we trace over it. All right, let's go on to the other one. Little oval in the front. This one's angled a little bit different, so it's going to look longer, but it's not bent. Let's add in that arc, little flick there, and then let's add in that back one, just like that. Plant your wrist, and it will give you these nice shapes naturally. Okay, now these front legs, they have some funky stuff going on. It's almost like when we draw grass and we do that back and forth, or fur. I say grass because that's how I always drew grass when I was little. Let's do it like how we did some fur, where we're up on this front oval. This would be like compared to us, our forearm, and we are going to add in just a few little jags right along that oval and flick your wrist. Actually, I'm changing it. Plant your wrist and let's add in some nice arcs. Let's do it that way. I think that's going to read a little bit better. Give yourself some arcs. Now, as you go down that arm, you can change them into little triangles, but they go long to short. Same thing on this part. They start out, let's ride that oval down, and then on this one we can do the flicks. We'll go about halfway down and flick your pencil out. Flick your pencil out, flick your pencil out, until you meet up with that base part there. Same thing on this front one. Flick, 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 flick. Now, when we do this next part on our marker, we could just use the width of our marker, but we're going to make some little marks just so you know where they live. This next part, it's almost like they have these cute little dots on here. My guess is these are what helps them grip onto things, so we're just going to draw some little dots on the edges, on the base of those arcs. Now, I like to draw things in uneven numbers. 4, 5, so I did 5. You pick however many dots you want, but they live up right about there on those little parts. Their hands, legs, who knows? Okay, so draw in some dots there. Now let's go back to the body, like the main portion of our praying mantis here, and let's add in some rectangles. So actually, let's do a connecting triangle between that back shell and that long skinny neck. Let's add in a triangular shape right there. Then let's add in a triangular shape right here. It's going to come down from there and kind of line up with the base of it. Let's do it that way. Get a nice little triangle right there. From there, we are ready to add in some rectangular shapes for the legs. Now, our guy has like 6 appendages, 6 arms, 6 legs, whatever you want to call them. So from here, we're going to add in a rectangle. It is going to be angled ever so slightly back. Now, this leg is going to read as the one that is closest to us. It's going to look the closest to us. So we're going to have a thicker rectangle at the top. Off of that one, you're going to have some skinny ones. Plant your wrist, move your pencil back and forth, and get a nice skinny little rectangle there. Now we're going to do kind of a longer one off of this one. Now if it's going to have just an ever so slight curve to it, so plant your wrist on this and try to go straight and then just curve it just a little bit at the end there. If you want to sketch, you can do that. But you can also just plant your wrist and move your hand in the natural motion it's going to go in. And then at the base, add in the base there. Now let's write down the back of that one, and when we get right about to here, we're going to give it a little flick out. It's almost read like burrs or hairs. When you look at them, it's really, you know, I don't think they've been photographed a whole lot, so it's hard to see sometimes the details that they have, but come down and give it a little flick off the back. All right, now let's go back up where we had that connecting triangle there. Let's give the hint of a rectangle off of that. We're just going to see that front portion, but if you want to see that whole shape, I'll show you. That's where I'm getting that idea of a rectangle right there. But we're just going to see this front part. So draw like a backward L right there. And then at the base of that, we're going to do a long, skinny rectangle. I'm planting my wrist and just moving my hand back and forth and back and forth. I'm going over it several times to get the shape that I want. It's pretty skinny, and it's pointed up toward our front arms there. And at the end of that, let's do a teeny tiny little circle. Now moving on from there, we're going to do, kind of like we did on this guy, we're going to do a nice little arc off of there and create kind of a rectangular shape, but it's in an arc. And then at the base of that, we're going to give it just a little tiny rectangle there. Now, about the same distance down, we're going to add in those burrs. And on this little leg, we see them here, but we also see it there. Just like that. You can even cross it over if you want. You could do the same on that back part. Let's add in a little one on the front there too. Almost looks like if they wanted to, they could maybe bend this bottom portion just a slight different direction. All right, from there, let's move to the back end. We have 2 more legs to go. We're going to add an oval that's a little bit thicker right here. It's going to live right there. Kind of tucked up where our body meets that shell. I'm going to add an oval there. And off of that oval, let's add in a back leg. It's going to go back this way and down, almost like a cricket. It's going to come up into the body and back down. I'm going to add a little circle there to give it some cuteness. Little rectangle there, pointed up. And off of that, we're going to draw another rectangle that goes all the way back. It's kind of long, and this one is even skinnier than this one. So add in that back rectangle, just like that. Very good. And at the base of that, we're just going to add in a little arc. So you could plant your wrist and draw a little arc right there. Almost like a little arced triangle. And then you can add in a few of those little burrs there at the base of it. Just a few of those little burrs. And if you went up to from this part, we're going to add in one of those little burrs right there. Very good. One last little skinny rectangle. Now on the back leg, we are only seeing this portion right here. So from the body, almost right where that body and that front leg meet, let's draw a skinny little rectangle that comes down right here. Just like that. Very good. And at the base of it, let's add that little triangular arc that we had on that other foot. Plant your wrist, get a little triangular arc there. And then let's add in those burrs. Now on this one, the angle allows us to see both. So we're going to do one this way, kind of bring it over, and one this way. All right, looks kind of cool, huh? You are ready for your marker. Actually, let's add one little detail that I think might be easier to sketch over. This part here is all going to read as one shape, but where we have our oval going into our larger oval, let's do a little mimicking line for ourselves down that front one and then around that next one. See that? It kind of bends with it and just mimics those shapes. And then on this base part, we're going to go a little mimicking line around that front oval, up, back onto that shell, and down. So it's going to go down like this, and up, and then back down that back. Just like that. Okay, now we are ready for our marker. Switch over to your marker. I'm using a Sharpie. You can use any kind of drawing utensil you have that you can't erase. I opened a new Sharpie the other day. There it is. So I gotta find that one. New Sharpies make me very happy. Okay, let's start up at the head. Let's do these antennas first. Start at the tip of the antenna, set your marker down, hold it there for a second, and then bring it to the head. Now when you hold it there, see how it gave it that little added detail? It just, your marker bleeds onto your paper a little bit, and it gives it a little rounded edge. Oop, I've got a hair on my marker. There we go. Okay, now let's go down to the face. For this front eye, we're going to draw around about 3/4 of it. We're going to start right here, and we're going to go around that circle and stop right there. Then that inside circle, let's go ahead and fill that guy in almost all the way. Maybe leave a little white highlight. My white highlight got filled in. Leave a little white highlight, might make it look cool. If it gets filled in, that's okay. Don't worry about it. All right, that little connecting triangle that we had there, let's trace over that and then around the edge of that back circle, down the triangle onto that nose circle, and then back. Now we're going to go just a little bit back into that skinny triangle we had. Now let's hop on this back part so we know where everything ends, and then we'll be able to fill in our front things better. Now this part here is all kind of one shape. So we're going to go around the top of this circle, give it a little bend right there for that next oval, and then down the edge of that long rectangle and onto that triangle and stop. Now let's go back up. We're going to go around the edge of this oval, onto the edge of this oval, onto the edge of this rectangle, and then head down. So that edge, around that edge, down that long skinny rectangle, down that connecting triangle, and then just tuck in at the top of that rectangle for that leg there. Just going to give a little hint of that. Let's add in that one little detail we had where we drew a mimicking line there that comes around to there and it stops. Now let's do this back shell. So this back shell is made up of this oval and this oval, and it all reads as one giant shape. So let's start at the top of that. We're going to curve in and go down around this, onto the connecting triangle, down around this, and then around that last oval. So here we go. Down and around. You've done all the heavy lifting. At this point, you are just picking your favorite line and tracing over it. I'm going to go back up this way because I like to go that way so I can see what I'm tracing over a little bit better. I like to keep what I'm tracing over in front of me. So I did around that shape. Now I'm going to go on to this. I'm going to have to stop and pick up my marker when I get to my legs. So I'm going to actually start at my leg so I don't actually trace over it accidentally. And then same thing here. Pick it up when you get to your leg. From the leg, back. Very good. Let's go ahead and draw that leg so it's not so difficult. Now that back leg, you see almost this whole thing. The edge of that oval, and then it goes up the long skinny rectangle, down the long skinny rectangle. Now when I get to the bottom, I'm going to kind of give a little flick. All right, back up here around the top of that oval, a little notch for that little connecting, up the long skinny rectangle, back down. When I get to the burr, I'm going to give it a little flick onto that foot, then add in those little like hairs there, just like that. Now do you see how mine, it got a little wavery, and some places, like I wouldn't call that perfect, or what I meant to do. That's okay. Drawings are not going to be perfect. I don't want you to think that they are or expect them to be. How I might fix that is I might just add in a little shadow right here, or make this line a little thicker, or I might just leave it alone. Sometimes those little accidents, I call them happy accidents, they end up giving your drawing character, and they actually create energy within your drawing. So maybe let's just leave that alone and see what we think at the end, okay? Let's add in this body oval. We're going to draw a little bit over this one, and then a little there, stop at the leg, and a little there. So do that bottom arc, stop. I'm going to go up to the top. From the leg, there we go, and that little bit there. However, whatever order you want to do those in, that's the little section we're doing next. Let's do our little oval on their shell. I'm calling it their shell because it looks like the hardest part of their body. I guess praying mantis, they can be pretty intense. We're going to do this little mimicking shape next. Up and around, down to the leg. If you were to color this, that little oval that we just drew would be white, and this little ridge between the mimicking line and the shell, that would also be white. Kind of interesting. All right, let's do this back leg and then work our way back up the body. We're just going to go trace over these outside lines. When you get to those little burrs and the edges of their feet, give it a little flick. If you know the technical terms for all these things that I'm calling hands and feet, which we know that's not what they're called, let me know in the comments below. Okay, next up, we're going to go around the edge of this rectangle right here. Then we're going to tuck into that shape. It's going to kind of overlap. And the edge of that rectangle. And down we go. Flick your wrist when you get to the burr. Same thing, edge of that foot, flick your wrist, back up we go. Edges of all these shapes, if you want to cut in a little bit, you can. Very good. Now we're going to connect that rectangle all the way up, just like that. Same thing we did on this leg, let's do it on that leg. We're just going to go around the edges of these shapes. So when we get the little burrs and the little details, we're going to give it a little flick. All right, edge of that one. Onto the edge of this long skinny rectangle, around your tiny little circle, down and flick, down and flick. If at any point I'm tracing faster than you're tracing, you can always pause me, trace what you want to trace, hit play when you're ready, and I'm going to be right here. All right, very good. And up to these arms. I'm kind of excited for this part. If you've ever looked at my drawings on my website, or on Instagram, you'll see I am all about the details. So this part is really fun for me. So let's go up to this circle. We're going to go from that circle down to our oval, around that oval. Here's where it's going to get fun. We're going to trace along here and flick and flick and flick and flick to get those shapes. Around we go. Give it a little flick. Now it looked like it kind of gets smaller as they go up that forearm there, but each one, like some of them had really long ones, some of them had really short ones, so it might be kind of a fun thing to Google these guys. They were definitely interesting looking. All right, we're going to go around the edges of this shape, down and flick and flick and flick and flick, and stop. Down, flick, 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 flick. For this piece, you want this piece to be one motion, and then you can add in the dots. So plant your wrist to trace over the line you already drew. and then add in your little dots. For me, my marker is thick enough where I'm literally just setting it down on the paper and it's creating those dots for me. Let's go back up. We're going to go around this side of that little circle now. Get his little shoulder in there. Down around to the elbow. Connecting triangle. Now we're going to do this oval, top of that oval, onto that little connecting rectangle. Down and around. There we go. Now, we're not going to draw any of those lines inside there. So those will all end up getting erased. Let's do that back shoulder, down around that back arm, onto that connecting triangle, onto that back arm, down around that little connecting triangle, around this top edge, bring that and flick. We're not going to see any of this on that back arm, so we're going to bring it right here where those two arms kind of meet up there and go around those shapes. Flick. Give it some cool little motions there, and then that last little bit and we're done. Just going to set my marker on that line and add in my dots. We got to do the top of the face. I almost forgot. So for this one, now we know where those shapes are going to meet. We're going to draw from the connecting triangle over and then down that line. So just add in those two little shapes right there. Now you have yourself a super cool praying mantis. Now take a look. You know how I said I had that area over here that bothered me? I'm pretty pleased with it, so I'm going to leave it alone. But if you had any areas that bothered you, think of a clever solution for how to fix them. Maybe you make that line just a little bit thicker, or maybe you leave it alone and you will be surprised when you erase everything how cool it actually looks. You are ready for your eraser. I'm going to move back to my guide because I drew this with an eraser. Make sure I'm all lined up there. Steady your paper with your hand and just start erasing all of your guides. Thank you for drawing a praying mantis with me today. Laura Boster, I hope you have a wonderful birthday. And Karen Booker, thank you for the suggestion. If you have suggestions on what you'd like to draw, send them to me in the comments below, and make sure you send me pictures of what you are drawing. I cannot wait to see what you're drawing. Dahlia, I saw your koala bear right before I started drawing this, and I was so excited. You did a beautiful job. I can't wait to add that to my website. On my website, RebeccaInk.com, on the Interact tab, you will find all of the drawings that you have sent me. I'm putting them up there sometimes more than once a week if I'm getting lots of them in. And you can see what everybody's been drawing. It's very exciting. You guys are talented. Very fun to see. Oh, I'm not moving my hand and I'm crinkling my paper. Try to move your hand. Too many things talking and erasing, I guess. Look at what you did. Very, very cool. If you are looking for some more things to do, you can go on my website, RebeccaInk.com. I have downloadable coloring pages on there. They're just $1, and they're very, very intricate, and they will keep you busy for quite some time. When you're done coloring, send them to me. I'd love to see what you're coloring. You can find me on Facebook at Rebecca Ink, I-N-K, because I like to draw with ink. You can also find me on YouTube on Rebecca Ink. And you can find me on Instagram at Rebecca Ink of Ink. Thank you for drawing with me today. I hope you had fun, and I will see you next week. Take care, stay healthy, and stay positive. We'll see you soon. Bye.